Hi everyone, and welcome back to Heimler's History. Now this will just be a quick lecture on the emergence and proliferation of a distinctly American artistic culture that emerged during the first half of the 19th century. Now prior to this, Americans had never really settled down long enough to create a unique artistic and literary sensibility because, we were too busy settling the West and violating all of those Indian treaties that we had made because, that took a lot of work.
It's time to kick it old school.
So it was during the first half of the 19th century that American writers, artists, architects, and historians really began to come into their own and create uniquely American art. And you should know that the intellectual climate of the time was suffused with an idea called Romanticism. And this way of understanding the world emphasized imagination over reason, nature over civilization, and gut feelings over rational calculation. Romantics wanted to poke around in their guts and find what was there and then spill it out onto canvases and paper. So let's talk about the writers first. During this period, you've got Washington Irving, who became famous for his story Rip Van Winkle, that tale of the hapless man harassed by his wife, who inadvertently slept through the entire American Revolution and woke up afterwards to a completely changed society. And let's not forget James Fenimore Cooper, who wrote the best-selling Last of the Mohicans. But maybe most notable during this period was the rise of what was called the Transcendentalist Writers. They called themselves Transcendentalists because they thought that knowing truth was more than just a matter of taking the world in via the senses. They thought that truth transcended the mind, and therefore you must use more than your brain folds to discover it. The most famous of these guys was Ralph Waldo Emerson, who argued through his writings for self-reliance, self-confidence, self-improvement, optimism, and freedom. A close associate of Emerson's was Henry David Thoreau, who took these principles in hand and moved to a little shack by a pond for 2 years and lived as simply as he could and wrote his reflections in the book Waldo. And it was Thoreau's book that epitomized the Transcendentalist longing to escape civilization and live under the principles of self-reliance. Oh, and you've also got that magnificent American poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who wrote one of my favorite poems, The Cross of Snow. And you must indulge me as I read to you this poem. And this poem will make more sense to you if you understand that he wrote it about his wife who died because her clothes caught fire in their house and she burned to death. In the long, sleepless watches of the night, a gentle face, the face of one long dead, looks at me from the wall, where round its head the night lamp casts a halo of pale light. Here in this room she died, and soul more white never through martyrdom of fire was led to its repose, nor can in books be read the legend of a life more benedight. There is a mountain in the distant west that, sun-defying in its deep ravines, displays a cross of snow upon its side. Such is the cross I wear upon my breast, these 18 years, through all the changing scenes and seasons, changeless since the day she died. Ah, magnificent. Okay, those were the writers, but I must quickly add that there was a new form of portraiture and painting that arose during this time too. Probably the best known group of artists during this time was a group known as the Hudson River School, who, obeying their romantic impulses for nature, cast their eyes upon the rugged beauty of the American landscape and began to paint it. Here's a painting called The Oxbow by Thomas Cole, and as you look at it, you can almost feel the anxiety over the increasing industrialization of the land. Now, I mention all of this because it's very easy to talk about legislation and wars and politics and forget that even though our nation was crammed tight with pragmatics, it also had a beating heart, which looked at the American landscape, which looked at the American heart and said that what we had within us, what we had in front of us, was beautiful in our sight, and we ought to stop for a moment and see it. I'll see you next time.